The Dentalpreneur Podcast. Okay, doctor, it's time to put down that handpiece. You're listening to the show dedicated to helping dentists get their lives back. It's time to decrease your stress, increase your profitability, and regain your passion. Now introducing your host, Dr. Mark Costas.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Dentalpreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mark Costas. What's up, my friends? I hope you guys are doing great out there today. All right, I got a great friend on. God, you might be the most frequent guest that I've ever had. Today we have Dr. Aaron Nicholas, who is the very first ever DSI black belt coach, recently transitioned into more of a role of an instructor and teacher, but still works as an associate in the practice that he recently sold. Aaron has many, many years of really solid clinical background, clinical education, a very successful practice that he transitioned out of. And he's got a lot of stuff going on. How you doing today, my friend?
Good. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing great. First of all, why don't you catch up everybody on how your life has changed since practice ownership and that transition and kind of what you're doing clinically now. And then we can talk about all the things that you're doing as far as education.
Sure. Yeah. So I sold the practice in 2020 and I agreed to work back for a year. I cut to 3 days a week and then kind of made the same deal again because once you take off a lot of the ownership responsibilities, practicing is like being on vacation. Because all you're worried about is what's going on.
Isn't that weird? I don't want to interrupt you, but well, for the people that don't know, I recently sold my practices. Less than 2 weeks ago was my last clinical day as an owner. I'm not going to stop doing clinical dentistry. I'll probably help out in the practices from time to time, but also doing a lot of stuff at Colorado Surgical Institute and a lot of missionary work, which is the next chapter of my life. But I will say just in 2 weeks, Aaron, just the weight of all the managerial responsibilities, HR and all that stuff, it makes a big difference. And I didn't feel it at first for the first week. I felt like I was just on vacation because it was just a week. But this second week, I'm starting to feel the bandwidth open up and a little bit of the weight on the shoulders kind of lighten up. And it opens up your mind to different ideas and it just kind of changes the energy. I've noticed that, and I can only say that as a person that's been out of this for 2 weeks. You've been doing this for a couple of years now, but yeah, back to what you were saying, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, no, it gets better. I mean, it's a lot like going to the Dominican and doing missionary work. People go, "Oh, it's so wonderful you do that." It's like, well, I like doing dentistry. I like hanging out with people that I enjoy, and I do some good in the world. So it's kind of a win-win, but it's very similar. It feels very similar for being in the practice now. And, if the chair breaks, you just look at somebody and go, chair's broken. Probably need to fix that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or if Susie and Mary are fighting, you're like, someone probably might want to referee that or, whatever the proper term is to get everything back to neutral. But yeah, no, it's been good. I've actually found myself implementing some fairly simple new ideas into the practice clinically. Mm-hmm. Like we started buffering our own anesthetic recently. We started doing a 2-visit digital denture recently, and both those just came about because I was reading some stuff, and I went to the guy who bought my practice, who had been my associate. I said, "Hey, I think this is a really great idea. It doesn't cost a whole lot to get it started. What do you think?" And he's like, "Sure, let's do it." And so I've implemented some stuff that's actually worked out really well. So it gives you a little bit more because now you have bandwidth to think more clinical. Yeah. And less always managerial and process and that sort of thing. So that it opens your mind up a bit.
At the risk of going down a ridiculous rabbit hole, tell me about the workflow for the 2-visit denture, the digital denture. I always wonder about capturing vertical dimension and all that. How does that happen if you don't have base plates and that second step?
Right. So first off, it is for people that already have a denture only.
Oh, existing denture. Okay, gotcha.
Existing denture. Yeah, I don't have it for the other one, but if you go back and watch your webinar with Austin Vetter that you did during COVID, that's where I got the idea. Okay. Like I watched that, I was like, oh, this is great. And I shot him a couple of DMs and worked some things out. But basically, you take the old denture, you take a wash impression in the patient's mouth. Check the vertical dimension. If you want to change it, you can tell the lab how much you want to change it, et cetera, et cetera. You're then going to scan the entire denture, the intaglio, the buccal, the occlusion. You don't need the palate. You can do it or not do it. We tend not to do it. Then you need the occlusion of the opposing, and you need a bite registration. You send it off to the lab. They do it. They digitally put the thing together and have a little meeting with you online. And then you say, I like this or I don't like that, how you want to change or adjust things. And then they mill it out and they send it back to you. And then you put it in the patient's mouth. So 2 visits, you're still going to have to adjust. But man, just so much quicker. And the really interesting thing is that because the denture feels so similar to the one they just gave up, they're much more likely, usually you make a new denture, they're like, I don't know if this is going to work out or not. Like now you put it in and it's like they met their old friend again, except that, the denture is tighter. And like the one guy was my friend's dad, and I made him, he's really, really, really class 3. Mm-hmm. And this is my 3rd set of dentures I've made for him. And he said to me, this is the best set you've ever made for me. And I finish eating it at the same time as everybody else, rather than 20 minutes after everybody else, because I have to be slower and I can eat some foods I wasn't eating before. So, it was a pretty big win in my mind.
Well, you're saving some money on the chair time and the actual doctor/assistant time for each of those steps, but you're paying probably more in lab fees. What is the average lab fee for this procedure?
So the lab fee was like $420, $450, somewhere in there.
Okay, so significant is a significant lab fee, but you have to account for the savings in time and
sure.
materials.
But my time was talking to the patient, squirting some light body impression material and putting it in the patient's mouth, and then looking at the assistant and go, hold that. And then they do everything else. They scan the denture, they scan the occlusion. I'll check the vertical dimension, but that happened before I ever left. They send the denture off, and then I'll deliver the denture and any adjustments. And it's in some states, I think actually Arizona, in your state, I think that your assistant could do all that, everything past the impression. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. So are you at risk, just like with relines, that the base can be too thick, or does this process eliminate the excessive thickness of the base?
Well, if this is an old denture and the arch, the bone, the alveolus has changed shape already, there's some space in there, and that's why I want to reline with a light body, not something that's heavy, mm-hmm. And put that in their mouth and have them tap together a few times and just try to get it thinned out as much as possible. I've not had that problem yet, but I haven't done a ton of these either. Okay. I'll tell you, the biggest problem I have right now is getting somebody with a full denture to walk in the door.
Yes, I have a lot of those, man. I could do this all day long. And the thing is, people are always like, just like you said, people are always like, yeah, I need a new denture. This thing is getting loose. I personally don't like doing relines because the base gets thicker and thicker and thicker. And they're very, as far as my my kind of experience has been, they've been kind of, I guess, inaccurate and unpredictable relines, hard relines. So I kind of shy away from those, but it's happened many, many times where people are like, it's just not as good as my previous one that I had for 25 years. It's like, well, yeah, it's like an old pair of slippers, and you're putting a kind of, a new pair of shoes in there, and it's, your feet are going to be sore until you break this in. But yeah, it makes perfect sense that this could be a really good, a really good result for somebody that really loved their previous denture.
Yeah. And you can put in a post-palatal seal, whereas with a reline, you really can't do that.
Yeah.
So, the ones I've made have worked out real well. What we ended up doing was, we sent a email out to our present base and said, hey, we have some new stuff going on. We're going to give 40% off to the first 5 people that call back and want a denture. Mm-hmm. And then once that happens, then we're going to drop that and say, hey, you called back, but you weren't one of the first 5, so we'll give you 20% off. And then the other thing you can do, because now it's a digital file, you can go, okay, so here's the denture. Do you want a backup denture? We'll make a backup denture for 30% less. So now all of a sudden, the value of this procedure just kind of keeps going up and up and up. Yeah. Your chair time is down, and the lab bill's a little higher, but based on, if you have to set aside 4 appointments to do a denture versus 2 appointments, and one of them you only have to be in there for like 15 minutes. I mean, it's totally worth those few extra dollars.
Yeah, I get it. So this is interesting because every time I talk to you, you seem more interested in clinical dentistry, and you've been doing this for 40 years, right? So, right?
It's been a while.
So tell me, like, you don't have to do this anymore. Are you doing this because you want to stay in tune with some of the procedures that you're teaching? Are you doing this because you are passionate about clinical dentistry? You still want to be around people on a regular basis? Because you're definitely not doing this for financial reasons. I find it interesting and actually inspiring that you continue to practice clinical dentistry on the regular.
Yeah, I think some of it is that I want to stay in touch with what's new and what's happening. After you do this for about 30 years, you start to get kind of good at it, and you tend to like doing things that you're good at.
Yeah, that's true.
I also enjoy actually training the staff, because a lot of times, especially now, you find staff members, and most of them are either not well trained or haven't been in the industry very long. And there's a lot of really easy things that you can teach them, and ways of thinking about things that'll make their life better and my life better right now, and will kind of catapult them forward. It's a little bit the same as, I have the 90-day clinical accelerator, usually younger docs, although we've had some docs that have been out a while. And there's just ways of thinking about things that make their lives so much easier, but it takes a lot of reps and a long time to kind of come to that conclusion. But what if we can just give you that conclusion right from the get-go? I mean, how much easier does that make your life and make it better? So it's the same sort of thing with teaching the molar root canal course. But I go into work every day. I can help some patients out, usually in a lot less time than they're used to. I can help train some of the staff and get them moving forward. It's just kind of a very rewarding experience, especially since I don't have to referee. I don't have to worry about equipment. I don't have, all those things that are just kind of a pain. They're not my pain anymore. They're somebody else's. So yeah, it's funny because when I first sold the practice, like the staff is still there and they want to come to me, and I'd go, that guy over there, he's the one you want to talk to. And so once they got the idea that I wasn't going to run the practice, that just wasn't going to happen, they stopped doing that. But that also gives me the opportunity to say to them, hey, so you're a dental assistant. Is that the careers that we're doing? And they'll go, well, yeah, how good do you want to be? I want to be the best. Cool. I can help if you'll let me.
Yeah.
And then now they're coming to me to have me train them to do the things that before, as the owner of the practice, I'd have to sort of talk them into and, coach them into it and that sort of thing. So I'm very much on their side. And same with the patients. I'm very much on their side, and a lot of the things they want, I can't, I don't have any control over that. I don't run the practice anymore, but we can ask, so it makes it just a very low pressure environment.
Yeah. I love that. It's kind of like that meme, the breakfast meme where they show a picture of the chicken and the pig, and then they show a picture of like the bacon and eggs. It's like, well, the chicken was involved, but the pig was committed. So you're kind of involved now, and you're not super committed as much as you were before as a practice owner, where everything was on your shoulders. Just for the sake of people that haven't heard you on the podcast before, I'd love it if you could kind of go over what is involved with Monday Morning Dentistry. I'd love to talk about the 90-day clinical accelerator, 1 hour root canal and crown, and any other courses that you're teaching, how they came about, and at what frequency do you teach it, and how do people find out more about that stuff? Okay.
So I graduated dental school in 1987, which was probably before most of your audience was born.
Could be.
Came out, started a scratch practice, and almost went bankrupt. By luck, found a consultant. Remember, there's no internet at this point. There's no podcast. There's no YouTube University. All that kind of stuff.
Yeah. How did you find him, by the way? I'm curious. Was it like literally like word of mouth, or was it a postcard you got in the mail? How did you find consultants back then?
It was literally word of mouth. There was a periodontist that had opened the same day I had, right next door.
Okay.
And so since both of us had pretty open schedules, we frequently just kind of sit around and shoot the breeze. And at one point I said, well, in about 7 months, I'm going to be having to pack it in, because I can't, I'm looking at my working capital burn, and it's just not going to happen. And she had said to me, well, doctor, whoever it was in the next town over, just hired these consultants. He's pretty happy with them. You might want to talk to them.
Okay.
So I went over, I talked to them. They want you to sign a contract. And I just looked at the guy and I'm like, so how long before you can get me in the black? And the guy's like, I think we can have you in the black in 6 months. I'm like, okay, so if you can't, I will go bankrupt and you can get in line with everybody else. And he's like, okay, no problem. And we were in the black in 6 months, and kind of the rest is history.
Do you think that having Aaron, do you think that having your back against the wall like that, knowing that like I have no safety net, if I don't implement and I don't figure this out in 6 months, I'm, my dream of practice ownership is over forever. Do you think that level of, I don't know if I want to call it desperation, but that level of motivation was what got you turned around in 6 months?
Yes, and making sure you're walking down the right path. Do I do this or I do that?
Right.
Now in DSI, we have all these tools, and it's a very prescribed path, and we kind of know how to send people down there, and they're not making many wrong turns. Back then, it's like, there were lots of places to make wrong turns. There was nobody to model this practice after.
Yeah.
And so that made it much harder. At the same time, when they wanted me to do something that was quote unquote industry standard, but I felt a little bit uncomfortable about, it was kind of like, well, we're just going to feel uncomfortable because we don't really have a choice here. It's either that or we're going out of business, and hopefully that will work out. So that, it definitely helps to have your back against the wall.
Yeah.
No question.
Yeah. Okay. So, so you got things going in the right direction, and that practice started to thrive. In
right.
large part to the systems that we were implementing, et cetera, the help of this consultant, and just a lot of hard work and hustle.
Yeah, and part of that had to do, they actually provided free CE.
Oh.
So I would go to the CE, but because of that, I'd have to take a day off work and I have to go do the CE. And then sometimes it was really good, and sometimes it was such fluff, it was not worth my time.
Was it CE regarding practice management or clinical or both?
There was a lot of clinical stuff that was just so much fluff. It's like, there's no way I can take this back and implement it.
Okay.
Or it would cost so much money.
Right.
There's no way that I can do this in the near future.
Right.
So
not practical. Okay, got it. Yep.
Right. That's the whole thing behind the name of the company, Monday Morning Dentistry. It's like, training that you can go home Monday morning and implement if you have any sort of a well-stocked, well-equipped practice. I'm not asking you to go out and buy a $25,000 endo microscope so you can do molar endo. And there are courses that do that, but that's that. I don't think that's where most guys live. And I'm not asking anyone to do that. I want to find stuff that, easy things you can do that'll kind of move the ball for you.
Gotcha.
So anyway, we're cooking along for a while. And I've been using consultants ever since. So it's just like I go from one to the next, depending on what I need for the practice. You and I met at an implant course. I ended up joining DSI. I spoke at the second summit. And somewhere along the way, you were like, well, that's cool. If you're interested in doing more of this, you probably need to kind of figure some stuff that you can teach. And clinical is what I knew well. And so I started teaching the things that I do clinically. So lots of guys I knew at the time were not doing their own molar root canals. So the first course was the 1 hour molar root canal build-up and crown, because 1 hour of doctor time was about what I needed to get that whole process done. And we hooked those two procedures together so that we're not wasting a bunch of time bringing people back for a procedure that we could have started right then. And that's been very popular. And especially as people have brought on associates and they've been farming that out, it's like, oh, well, let's get the associate to learn how to do that. And actually, now that we're on the doorstep of a recession, I'm starting to see some older docs go, I'm getting a little bit more time in my schedule. Maybe I can start doing these again. I stopped because I didn't have a predictable system, and this guy's promising that he has a predictable system. Let's give it a shot. So we're starting to see a little bit more of that.
Very, very good course. I should know. I've taken it 3 times. You're welcome. But I mean, I like the way that you do it. Very, very stepwise. You address some of the common frustrations in molar root canal right off the bat. Mm-hmm. Some of the most common errors that people make, zipping canals, some kind of tips on locating canals. when you get stuck, those sorts of things, visualization. So all the things that we were never taught in dental school about endo, you kind of go over that. And those were tips that you picked up in the trenches over doing this, for decades, and really refining your skill set. Interestingly, this was a procedure that you really utilized to build your practice in a big way. The story is that, you didn't want to refer a lot of stuff out in order to build the practice. So you had to figure it out. And a lot of those tips really, really stuck with you. A lot of those procedures and hacks really stuck with you, and you're able to pass those on, kind of like you alluded to before, without people having to go through all those challenges. You just help them avoid them from the beginning.
Right. I mean, if you can put together a reproducible system that has objective measurements, so you know when to go to the next step, then that makes things a whole lot easier. I mean, for me, I had lots of time and I couldn't afford to send out the procedure. Yeah. So I kind of learned it in the trenches sort of thing. And remember, there was no rotary endo back in the day. So if you had like 3 molar root canals, you had blisters on your fingers at the end of the day. Yeah. I mean, no joke, blisters on your fingers. For sure. So rotary was nice, but even as rotary started, we actually changed the way we did endo, we as an industry, so that we could accommodate the rotary piece. But a lot of folks are like, hey, this is what you do. You open it up to a 10 and then you go ahead and start the rotaries. Well, once you've opened it up to the apex to a 10, the work's done. That's the hard part. And so how do we make that happen in a much more expeditious and predictable way is kind of the place to start. And when you get blocked out, not if, when, because you will get blocked out. Everybody gets blocked out eventually. What do you do to get past the blockage or the ledge or the fractured instrument to finish that procedure up? Because most people, we put surveys up on DSN all the time. Number one, the top 2 things that people have problems with endo: finding all the canals, negotiating it all the way to the apex. Yep. It's always the top 2 things. Yep. And all those things you can very objectively get past those. It's making me a little crazy these days when people start saying, in my hands this, in my hands that. I'm like, we know how to do this. Let's not in my hand, teach a system that works. And then if you want to adjust it because you're more comfortable with it, sure, great. But let's at least start with something that we know works. And then all changes, they're adding to your ability or they're taking away from your ability. And you can make that decision at that point. So that's kind of a little bit where I come from and the way I go with that.
Where do you teach these? Where do you teach these courses?
So twice a year they're taught in my office in Maryland. Okay, on the East Coast. Okay, and then twice a year we're teaching them in Denver. And we're kind of been moving around different docs' offices because the office we were teaching at, he sold that one and he's not up and running with the other. So we're actually going to be at Dr. Sean O'Grady's office for the next one in February.
Cool.
And then I'm going to Breckenridge to go skiing the week afterwards. So it should be fun.
Nice. Awesome. Okay. So let's transition to the 90-day clinical accelerator. That's really interesting to me. What was the impetus behind creating this course, and who is a candidate for it, and what happens? Sure. What happens during the 90 days?
Sure. So again, this is one of those courses that I put together because I've been a black belt coach with DSI for quite a while, and when I talk to docs, what I hear is my associate this and my associate that, and my associate the other thing, or I can't quite make this work. I can't quite make that work. And everybody wants mentorship. Associates say this all the time. Want to find a job, where I'm respected, I'm paid well, and that the doc is willing to mentor me. And most docs I know really want to mentor their associates. I mean, I did when I was a doc and I had associates, and just like everybody else, I had the same problem. You only have so much time, and you're really good with it for a little while. I've run into some docs that actually are very structured about it, and they never miss a meeting. But for the most part, you start missing meetings, and at about a month, 2 months, 3 months, you're not meeting with your associate anymore, which means they're not learning as fast as they could, and they're not getting that benefit that they thought they were going to get. Yep. And after a year, the associate's not any faster or more productive than he was before. So the owning doc is frustrated. The associate's frustrated. He's not making what he thought he was going to make. Yep. And then everybody parts ways, and then we get to start all over again. And then there's this story about how awful all ONE docs are. And I'm sure some of them are, but I'll bet a lot of them are just people with good intentions that didn't really have a plan.
Well, the story goes both ways, right, Aaron? The story goes, there's no good associates out there. What are they teaching them in dental school these days? And then from the other perspective, it's like, I got no mentorship in this thing. The doctor is just greedy. All he wants is to see my production numbers go up and up, and more concerned about my production number than the development of a skill set and really fine tuning my clinical ability. So that goes both ways. And whose responsibility is it? Is it the associate's responsibility to go out there and find the advanced clinical training outside of, on the job training? Is it the doctor's responsibility to go find it and then put the associate through that advanced training? So I see both sides, because I've been doing this for years and years, and I've had dozens, if not hundreds, of associates now in the last 21 years and 16 practices. So I see both sides, but this is something in just the world of dentistry that we really haven't had before, is kind of a predictable way to decrease the frustrations and increase the efficiency and clinical skill set with a very defined segment of the dental population.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to intimate that it was one side's fault or the other. It's like, it's in everybody's best interest that everybody, is doing this and moving things forward. And then two, you get to where, like when I got out of dental school, if you got $1,000 for CE, like that was huge. Now I hear, even bigger numbers than that. And a lot of times people want to go out and learn very advanced techniques, and that's cool. But if you can't do a surgical extraction of a tooth that's broken down from an emergency patient that walks in the door, or you can't do a molar root canal, again, of an emergency patient that walks in the door or a patient of record, or you can't do a quadrant of class 2 composites well in a reasonable amount of time, if you can't cut a crown prep and do that kind of a appointment in a reasonable amount of time, then going out and learning how to do all on fours, it's like, learn the basics first, get that good base. Because in the process of learning those things, guess what else you learn? You learn a lot more about how teeth, the occlusion, and how that works together. You learn about how to get really good anesthesia and what to do when you don't have anesthesia. Because if you go to do it all on 4 and you can't get anesthesia, you're kind of done for the day, And so those, and how to work with labs and how to work with your assistants. And those are all the things that are the base, just the basics of how to operate in a dental operatory, and then how to move forward from there. So if you can get those locked down sooner rather than later, you're in good shape. So back to the 90-day accelerator. That's where that whole idea came from, because I was like, there's a lot of these basics, and I talk to younger docs, and they'll ask the question. I go, well, it's just this. And they're like, oh my gosh, why didn't I think of that? And it's like, there's so much stuff that you as a doc learn over the years that you get to a point where you don't realize that you had to learn it at some point, and it's just sort of there, but they have to learn it, but you don't think to tell them that thing because you don't know that it's important. One of the things I've done with all my associates is I said, look, if I say something important, let me know, because I've been doing this for so long, I don't know. And if it's important, I want to make sure that I have that on board and at the front of mind. And that also gives you a feel for the level of what people know. So the first time we did the molar root canal course, we sat down and I got everybody to start. And like within the first 15 minutes, everybody's calling me over and they're having this issue. And what I realized was everybody's access opening was too small. And so I called everybody over and said, let's talk about access openings. Do it like that, and we went through. And then after that, for every course since then, I shot a video so that we could show, kind of what that should look like. But there's just so much that we as experienced docs know and have that is just innate at this point. If we've spent some time trying to get faster and more efficient, that we don't even think twice about it. And younger docs need to, somewhere they have to pick that up. 5 years of experience will probably get them there if they're paying attention to it. But, who wants to wait 5 years if you don't have to? And that was sort of the impetus behind the 90-day accelerator. If I can get a hold of folks and kind of go through my best stuff, and they can start to implement some of this and see the change and see the benefit, then they're going to implement faster, and they're going to it's going to move their career forward faster and give them really good, solid basics.
I love it. Talk to us about the order, the curriculum, how the information is delivered.
Sure. So we meet twice a week on a Zoom call, an hour to an hour and a half ish.
Mm-hmm. Is it small groups or is it individual?
Okay. 5 to 8 docs.
Okay.
On a Zoom call. I always have everybody unmute themselves. I know a lot of people like to do Zoom calls and like raise your hand and like, no, we're having a discussion.
Okay.
It's like we're all sitting in a room together.
That's cool.
So Monday night is going to be some sort of a concept. And there are 12 separate modules, and the modules can be mixed around, depending on what the group is looking for. The first 2 or 3 are pretty set because I want them thinking differently about efficiency, and about how to get through the procedure and what they're working with and the way they do things. Okay. And then the Thursday is more like an office hours, which at first is a lot of how's this working for you? What do we need to adjust? What's working? What's not working? And then later we'll transition into actually bringing cases. Because whenever you start talking cases, different things come up that people aren't thinking about before that. So we go through that. We talk about how to get in and out of the hygiene room and what you need to do to present properly and get case acceptance and not spend 20 minutes in the hygiene room. We talk about how to batch your procedures to make things make more sense and so you can be more efficient doing that. How to work with your assistant, how to train your assistant, how to make your assistant want to work with you. There's just a whole lot of things that our assistants can do for us and make things better. And it makes it better and more interesting for the assistant as well as for us. To me, one of my greatest disappointments is having an assistant walk in the door and say, I have 15 years of experience. And what you realize is that her doc didn't really utilize her very well. And what she really has is 1 year of experience 15 times. And all she knows how to do is suck, spit, and change rooms.
How many times have you seen that? It's so, it's so sad. It's like, oh, you've been doing this for 10, 15 years, can't make a temporary, doesn't know how to pack cord, doesn't know how to scan, knows how to load the sterilizer, break down a room, and literally suck spit. Yeah. That's it. And all this experience, all this experience and just a very, very limited skill set. Yeah.
And they would be so much more fulfilled. Work would be so much better for them if they could learn some stuff. And they're getting paid really well because they've been there a long time, but they don't know anything. And then when they go out in the real world after the stock retires or sells to a guy that they can't deal with, they're just kind of stuck. So I've seen that so many times.
For sure.
So we talk about that. We go through some root canal therapy stuff. We go through extractions and surgical extractions and how to make that work, bone grafting, flaps, sutures. Just kind of all the different biggies of dentistry, removable, crown and bridge, and then and go through what I've found to be best practices and the most efficient ways to do things, and then discuss issues, problems that they're having with that. I usually send out, well, not usually, I always send out a black box that has some of the things that I like to work with that are not particularly expensive, but I think just save a lot of time and effort. We also send a survey to both, if it's an owner doc, to the owner doc and to the doc's assistants, asking different questions to let us get a better feel for how the doc works with them and places where they might improve. And what we found is that once the assistants find out that the doc is trying to get better, they're like all in. They're like, oh, we can help make this doc better, And so it becomes much more of a team thing, which is kind of cool.
That is very cool. So for this, one of the cool things that you do for the 1 hour molar root canal buildup and crown, is that right? 1 hour molar root canal. Yeah.
You got it.
You have an ROI challenge, which I thought is very, very cool. And when you gamify anything and you put a challenge in front of people, especially type A, like hyperachievers, they're going to take you up on it and they're going to try to win that challenge. Right. So, I love your challenge, the ROI challenge that you do for the root canal course. And that's like, how quickly can you make your money back on the course that you just spent money on, basically, right? And it's often happened that within the first couple hours of people returning back to the office, they've already paid for, on Monday, right? They've already paid for the course that they just attended over the weekend. So do you have any kind of challenge for the 90-day guys and gals? Any kind of gamification to implement some of the stuff that you're teaching?
So usually for them, well, first let's talk about the 1 hour ROI thing. So that came about because, how many of us have taken courses and gone back home? I'll implement, and pretty much the moment's gone, Never happened to me, but
No, I'm very guilty of that.
Same idea. Yeah, same idea.
Yeah.
So what's funny is in that group, if you're doing any endo at all, they usually hit ROI in 7 to 10 days. The absolute winner was the girl that went home. Went home 7 a.m., first patient, emergency patient, did a 4-rooted second molar root canal buildup and crown, and saw her regular patients at the same time. And that person was out the door by about 9 or 10. But yeah, she wins. Like it's hard to beat that. But most people 7 to 10 days, and they're in pretty good shape. And the ones that aren't, what we'll see is they'll actually start doing molar root canals. The time will be a little bit longer, and then they'll start to tighten that time up over the weeks. Yeah. But like in 2 weeks, if I haven't gotten like pictures from them of their root, because you have to prove that you did it. So I want a picture of your finished root canal. If I haven't heard from them in 2 weeks, like I'm sending out texts like, guys, what's going on? And usually they've done it, but just kind of didn't bother to send the picture. And then when they send the picture, we always send them a book or something that, I thought would be good. For the 90-day accelerator guys, we have them time a bunch of different things. So they get to figure out what the time is. Then I have a training for them to go through. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to go back and retime everything. So the gamification thing is, can you beat your old score? Mm-hmm. But now that you mentioned that, it might be interesting to say, if you can beat your old score by X, then you'll get a prize.
Yeah. Over and above the baseline. Yeah. That would be cool. Yeah.
No, I like that idea.
Yeah. People would do it. Those challenges, challenges are too tempting not to do them.
And they're real simple to, if you do with the exercises I give, if you do the work, you'll get the prize. There's no 3 ways about it. Yeah. But sometimes, even though people are paying for it and they're spending their time doing it, it's hard to get them to actually do the next piece. The thing I always tell people is, this is a done with you course, not a done for you course. And I always tell the docs, I want whoever's in the course to have some skin in the game. So I want them to be paying for some portion of this course, no matter what. Because otherwise it's really hard to get people motivated to actually take care of that.
Yeah, for sure. So during the 90-day accelerator, are you doing some of the stuff that some of the other things you like to teach? Like you came to my office and you did the molar root canal course, and you did local anesthesia, profound painless local anesthesia course. That was a game changer for a lot of my associates. That's an awesome course that you teach. And then also you like to teach, because of your experience with surgical extractions, you like to teach people on that too. You're really good at doing that. I've watched you several years in a row at the Dominican Dental Project, where we do missionary work together. You can do a lot of really cool things without even a high speed, because we don't have access to those in the jungle.
Right.
So are you integrating some of those kind of tips into the 90-day accelerator?
Yeah, that all gets integrated in there. We have a whole module that's nothing but anesthesia. Okay. We have a whole module that's nothing but extractions, surgical extractions, that sort of thing. Okay. Both those things are on a streaming course on the Monday Morning Dentistry website, if anybody wants to take those. And it's the same things. It's the anesthesia, it's the surgical extractions. We also have one on there about accelerated hygiene. As well as the 1 hour molar root canal buildup and crown. But everything that I do ends up getting taught in the 90-day accelerator. And if they're like, hey, I think I want to take a course about this, or I have this procedure coming up, I've never done it, and I'm talking to my owner doc, and this is what he said to me, what are the tips can you give me? And so we'll do that. So the first time I did a section on locator dentures was because one of the docs was like, I had this thing coming up, I've never done it before. It seems pretty simple. What else? And so I put together one for him. And so that's why I like the 5 to 8 doc kind of total, because that way it can be extremely curated. And we'll swap around the modules sometimes. And in the middle of that, it's 13 weeks long, 12 weeks with me, and then 1 week of integration. So it's like, there's a lot of stuff coming at you at the very beginning. It settles out as we get toward the end, but you need some time to kind of integrate some of that stuff. So there's a week in there where there's nothing new going on, but you'll go ahead and integrate. And then in the following week, we can talk about what worked, what didn't work, and where do we go from here.
That's cool. I like that a lot. All right, I want to shift gears a little bit because you were the person that introduced me to missionary work in the third world. You and I every year go to a missionary project or a mission project in the Dominican Republic outside of San Jose de Ocoa. We actually stay in San Jose de Ocoa at a Catholic mission, and then we jump off every morning to different small towns. We load up all of our stuff, head out with a group of people in pickup trucks and buses, and we end up in these very, very tiny poverty-stricken villages, and we perform dentistry in 5 different villages every single year, which is it's the highlight of my year. It's one of my favorite weeks of the year. And I'm very, very excited to announce that our 501c3 through Dental Success Institute has been accepted finally through the IRS. Took 9 months. We're calling it Smile Outreach International, and we will be doing missionary work throughout the third world, throughout the entire world, but in third world areas. Aaron's one of the board members for Smile Outreach International. And Aaron, what do you think, as somebody that's founding this, that I need to know and that I need to be aware of when we're starting a brand new mission project? Because you've been doing this for almost 30 years.
Right. It's a little bit like hiring staff members. Yeah. As you're looking at people who want to come on trips and et cetera, make sure it's somebody you don't mind living with for a week. Make sure that they're kind of self-sustaining and self-starting, because
and hardy,
having to babysit,
hardy too, right? Because there's no air conditioning. A lot of times it's mosquito nets, and sometimes we're doing extractions out in the sun. With goats walking around us, which is very interesting.
Yeah, and little flies walking down your forceps, because that's where the blood is, and those sorts of things. Yeah, but somebody, who you take matters. It will matter your experience on the trip. When you're down there, or wherever it is, these folks are poor. Mm-hmm. And so, sometimes things disappear, and you just can't get too upset about that. You need to kind of set things up so that that's going to be fine. As you're looking at going to different places, you need to be aware of, what's going on in the general political climate and the general climate of the country. We've only had 1 year, I think, where we had to cancel because of politics, and it may have presented a danger to the folks going down. But
was that when you guys were doing a second trip to close to the border of Haiti, or was that right there in San Jose de Ocoa?
That was right there in San Jose de Ocoa.
Really?
And it was really early on. Yeah. We never had any problems with Haiti. We were 30 minutes drive from the Haitian border when we were out in El Cercado.
Okay.
Never had a bit of problem. It's always a little interesting as your bus is driving out or coming back from there. They want to make sure there's no Haitians sneaking in. So you have these stops, and some dude with a submachine gun walks into your bus and looks around to make sure there's no Haitians in there. It's a little intimidating.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you think?
But no issues at all being out there.
Yeah, we were talking earlier off air that the mission project that we do is very, very well run, extremely well organized, but it's not the easiest setup, right? So we have all of our equipment, supplies, and people staying in one location, and every day we get up early and we repack and then head out to different locations every single day. So we could be in a schoolhouse, which is typically where we are. We could be in a community center. Usually the building that is made out of slump block or concrete is the building that we're in. Whether or not it has electricity or running water is usually not. So we bring our own. So that there's a lot of logistics that go into that. Now, if we could potentially create standing facilities where we leave our equipment and supplies year round in one place, I think it would be easier, but that's not always where the most need is, correct?
Yeah. I mean, ours runs like that, and we go to 5 towns every year. And we rotate through a bunch of different towns, but they know we're coming back. If we don't hit them this year, we'll hit them another year. And they're all assigned to that one parish, which is how we got that situation. Mm-hmm. When we were out in El Cercado, because of the difficulty doing something like that, what we did was each town was assigned a day, and the town would come down and we would treat them, and then they paid for a bus to take them back to town so that they're not trying to walk back on roads after having extractions and that sort of thing. And so both work. But yeah, if it's a single location, it's definitely way less labor intensive. And then, you need to have somebody responsible for what's down there when we're not there. Yeah. So in San Jose de Acoa, there's a closet. We put all our stuff in it, and only 2 people have the key. And it's the guy who's running the trip and the nun that lives there. And that's it. No one else can get into that closet, and no one else does. And then we come back next year and unpack and send a bunch of extra stuff down. In El Cercado, I think it was a similar situation where it was the priest and us, and we had the key, and that was it. Because otherwise things just tend to walk, so you have to make sure that you're, don't be a jerk about it, but you need to make sure that you're being secure with the stuff that you have down there so that you can do the work that you want to do. We have had 1 or 2 times where stuff like this last year, I don't know if you know or not, but this last year, after the first town, all of a sudden there were no high-speed handpieces at all, anywhere. And we had like 5, 6, 7, 8 of them, when we started. And Frank just put out the word. He's like, hey, no handpieces, no operative tomorrow, no fillings. And magically 7 brand new handpieces showed up. So, okay, fine. You deal with what you have to deal with.
Yeah. I think you bought 10 off eBay of those Chinese kind of disposable handpieces. They work really well. I think I'm going to bring several down as well, just to have spares and maybe keep them in my suitcase, just in case something similar happens again. But what do you think about limiting? My goal is to get one of these projects up and running before the end of 2023 with the logistics and we haven't even located a location yet. So we have a lot to do in 12 months. We have to find a location. We have to get the volunteers, which is no problem. And then we have to get the supplies, the equipment, and everything. What would you think about just doing maybe an extraction mission trip for the first try at it?
Yeah, I have no problem. For years, all we did was mostly extractions and then a little bit of operative. You came into a project that had been running probably 30 years before you got there.
Yeah.
And our number of extractions really, really went down. When I went on that project in 1986 as a student, and I ran 3 chairs. I was like numb, pull numb, and all day long I was doing that. And so were 3 or 4 other guys. As well as people running 1 and 2 chairs. And we did not, there were people we couldn't see. So because we've been going to this parish for so long, they know the dentists come back every year. We're handing out toothbrushes. We're talking about oral hygiene. We're taking care of a lot of the really bad teeth, and they're avoiding a lot of issues because of that. And then there has been some fluoridation in like salt. Like they tried at one point to put fluoride in the drinking water, but it's just so hard up there because of the way the water supply works.
Yeah.
But just like put iodine in salt, you can put fluoride in salt. And so there's been a lot of that going on. So adding some fluoride that way. So it's been, things are better, way better than when we started. So to have a just extraction trip, would probably be completely viable. I know there are some guys that teach extraction courses and do it in a missionary type of setting. And certainly they don't want for patients if they've set it up. The other, as I'm saying that, the other thing that I would say is you need to make sure that you get the word out, because even though we're doing this and we're doing it for free, these people actually have lives and they have to go and tend to their farms or do the other things they're doing. Yeah. So we've been down there once or twice where whoever was supposed to be doing the
outreach the market, quote unquote marketing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so we sat and twiddled our thumbs. One year I basically did almost nothing because I wanted the students that came down with us to have the opportunity. So I sat around a lot. I helped them as much as I could. But if I was taking those patients, then they weren't getting the experience. So we were bringing rising senior dental students and wanted them to have the opportunity. And so that's what I did that year. But it is very possible to get down there and have no one to work on. So we need to make sure that we're canvassing properly and marketing, advertising, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, this has been a dream of mine since I started doing, volunteer work on the homeless. way back in my first year of associateship in downtown Phoenix with Dr. Chris Volchek. That evolved into the Brighter Way Clinic, which is just a beautiful state of the art clinic down there in downtown Phoenix. He's still in charge of it. He is a master at fundraising, and he tells a great story. So he's never been short of being able to pump more money into his homeless clinic down there in downtown Phoenix. So if any of you guys are ever in that way, he's always looking for volunteers, but that is gorgeous. So ever since that experience, because before he had the beautiful clinic built, it was a donated single wide trailer, and there'd be a hygiene chair, and in the same room, there'd be an operative / restorative / surgical chair right next to him. And the people would just wait in the 115-degree weather out the door. There'd be a line out the door, and you just saw as many patients as you could. And he inspired me, and then going on these mission trips has really inspired me. So this is a dream of mine to be able to found a nonprofit charity mission project myself, with obviously the help of people that have done this before, like you and our awesome board. And I can't wait, dude. I'm so excited. I feel like this is just like the natural next step, next chapter in my career. After, hanging up the handpiece in practices that I own, this is where I get to keep my hands wet and do it on a really deserving population.
Yeah. I mean, having sold my practice, and people have asked me, well, what's next? And I said, well, if I can get my life arranged so that all I do are mission trips and teaching, that would be like perfect.
Yeah, what a dream! Really, what a dream life, right?
Yeah, so that would be fun.
Yeah, and I always tell people, like, we take our skill set for granted because you and I we alluded to it in the beginning. It's like all of the challenges and stress that comes along with practice ownership, we forget about what we can do. And burnout is really, really, really prevalent in dentistry. Burnout and mental, emotional, and physical exhaustion. It's a very tough profession. I'm telling you, man, if you guys are ever feeling burnt out or disenchanted with the profession, just go on a week-long mission trip. It'll recharge you. Believe it or not, it's counterintuitive, but it'll recharge you much more than sitting on the beach and getting drunk every day on a random vacation. It'll get you back in touch with why you got involved with dentistry in the first place. And it'll remind you of the value and gift that we have in our hands as dentists, I think.
Well, and just the how grateful people are for this thing that you can do for them. Yeah. I mean, we've all had somebody bring a bunch of tomatoes to us, or a chicken, or whatever, because they were just so happy.
Avocados is my favorite. I get avocados every time in the DR. Yeah.
That's always nice. Yeah. So it's one of those things where they're just super grateful. And how many places do you go, or how many times do you come to work at your office and there's like 300 people waiting outside the front door, and you show up and they cheer, and then when you do the work, they hug you, and then they bring you avocados. I mean, it just doesn't happen here, and it does happen down there on a fairly regular basis. Yeah,
it's amazing. We show up, and the ladies show up, and they build a fire with wood that they bring with them. They have these huge pots. They put the rice on as soon as we start. So you can, it smells the same in every village. They start the fire. They put the big pots on. They start boiling the rice. They literally either have dead chickens with the feathers still on, or they bring live chickens with them and kill them there. They pluck the chickens. They do what they need to do. They start cooking the chickens. They start cooking the root vegetables. And by about 12:30 every day, we go and we eat. And it's just a labor of love. Like, they make these gigantic meals, and that's their gift back to you. And they really, really care whether or not you like the meal. And there's a sense of pride when they see everybody sitting there eating. It's very special. It's a very special experience.
Yeah, you just want to be really careful that you don't let them like serve you the stuff out of the bowl, out of the pot, because as an honor, they will give you the feet and or the head. Yes. And you kind of have to eat it if you get it. So
they don't waste a thing, man. The head is always the jackpot. We always joke with one another. It's like, who got the head? Oh, I got a foot. I didn't get the head. but yeah, it's good stuff. It's good stuff, Aaron. So how do people get in touch with you, buddy? I know that there's probably a lot of people that are interested in attending one of your courses, particularly the 90-day clinical accelerator. I think that you have more than enough people taking your root canal class, but from time to time you have an opening. So how do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the February root canal course has a few openings in it, and as does the 90-day accelerator. I think we have one opening on the 90-day accelerator, maybe two. So first off, if they're listening to us on a podcast, and we can give them some discounts here. So if they put in Costas as a discount code, they can get $200 off either the root canal course or the 90-day accelerator. If you're a DSN member, DM me. I'll get you an even better deal because I know the boss. And then if you want to find it, typically go on mondaymorningdentistry.com. It's mondaymorningdentistry.com. And there's buttons right on the first page because it was too buried and people were complaining. So right on the first page, it says, these are the courses. Click a button and it'll get all the information for the courses and you can sign up there. You can always reach me on DSN, or if you want to text me, I will give you my number. No one's abused it yet, so I'm going to keep doing this. It's 410-207-3527. It's 410-207-3527. It's my real phone number. Text me. If you call me, I'll let it go to voicemail and then see who it was. But otherwise, I think that's it. So the next 90-day accelerator starts the last Monday in January. So it's January 30th. And the next molar root canal belt and crown course is February the 25th. And if you like to ski and want to go up to Breckenridge and want to hang out, I'll be up in Breckenridge for a week after that.
Awesome. We're going to see each other a lot this year, dude. I'm really, really excited. We have February coming up. We're going to Nashville with the group from the Dominican Dental Project, and we're going to be doing some planning for that. We have lots of fun things coming up. So I really, really thank you a lot for everything you do for our profession. Thanks for continuing to be an awesome DSI black belt coach. You were just there this past weekend in Scottsdale, just killing it, slaying it as always. And congratulations on your transition and all the fun things you're doing. I think that you probably don't know this and you probably take it for granted, but a lot of people are looking to you as a model about what they want to transition into at some point in their career. Not putting down the handpiece, necessarily still integrating with the practice that they sell and getting into education and a lot more charity stuff. That sounds like a perfect transition, a perfect second chapter.
Well, that's humbling, but I'm more than happy to talk to folks. I did talk to a doc actually this past weekend about what was it like? Do you wish you did it earlier? Do you wish you waited? Is there anything you've changed? And so I'm always more than happy to have that conversation because otherwise you just don't know. You're just kind of going off into the dark and hoping that it's all going to work out. But it's been really good. I wouldn't have changed it. Like things worked out very well for me. I don't know that I would have gone earlier. I will say that having the right person purchase your practice makes it a lot easier. Mm-hmm. So there were a couple of associates that wanted to buy it. And I was like, I don't know that I can live with you for afterwards. Mm-hmm. I didn't say it quite like that, but I just, it's kind of like, I don't want to be in business with you. I don't think that's going to work for us. Yeah. And then I helped them find a practice to buy. So it was all everybody parted friends. Might have been a little tough on the ego initially, but I think they've done very well on their own also. So I think they're good and I'm good. And it's worked out for both.
Awesome. All right, Aaron. So, until next time, I'm sure you and I will do another Whiskey and War Stories soon. It was a little early to do a Whiskey and War Stories today. It would have been a 10 o'clock whiskey, which is a little early even for your taste, I think. So next time, maybe we'll do it in the afternoon and we'll tell some funny stories like we like to do from time to time.
All right. That sounds good. Always happy to be on and always appreciated what you've done for me personally, for the group that we work with and profession in general. So no, all good stuff.
Thanks, buddy. Best to your lovely wife on a heat and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Take care.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Aaron Nicholas.